Hi, this is Hyperwave. I am Leah Wald here with Tyler Jenks, and we are going to look at the recent Bitcoin price action. Tyler wanted to label this vlog as a brief history of Bitcoin, as in Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. I changed him against it, but maybe we'll re-edit that later. But anyways, it is a brief look at what Bitcoin's price action is. So Tyler, how's it going?
Very good. I want to personally congratulate Leah, the author, for that wonderful piece that she put not too long ago. And thank you all for your quick response to it. It really is terrific to hear people actually talk about how they got in, what they were thinking about, how it's changed them. I think there's a lot of stories out there. And the more that they get told, I think the better the community is going to be. But terrific.
Thanks, Dad.
We apologize for the short notice. We were thinking of trying to do something around the close today because I'm getting a little bit nervous about the short term. It looks to me like Bitcoin's about to break again to the downside. As you all know, my downside target over a 2 to 5 day period, and that was 2.5 days ago, is in the mid sevens, 7,400, 7,500, somewhere down in that area. It looks to me like it's getting ready to get there fairly quickly. So we thought instead of waiting for the close, we would just take a look at what the price action's been like for the last 24 hours since we did this before. We aren't going to take a long time. We're just going to talk Hyperwave and Bitcoin specifically. I did want to just bring up a couple of things on Hyperwave. Again, there's still a lot of misunderstanding by some of the newer followers, just in terms of what a phase 7 really means. We are in a phase 7 in Bitcoin. So I'm going to pull up a couple of charts just very quickly. So let's get to it by punching some buttons, hopefully in the right order. That looks pretty good. So we're going to pull up the some of you know this, but this chart was drawn by hand by me 40 years ago. This is not something that I am trying to fit over the past 3 or 4 or 5 months into Bitcoin. It's been sitting in drawers for years and years, decades. Every once in a while, I pull it out because something's happening, like the stock market in 1987 or the gold market in the late 1970s or the Japanese stock market peaking in 1989, or the NASDAQ running from 1995 to 2000, or the stock market in 2006, 7, 8, and 9. But other than those, handful of examples, this thing sits in a drawer most of the time. It's incredibly powerful, but not very often. So I just wanted to remind everybody that this is unchanged for 4 decades, and it keeps working. And it's worked in every one of those instances I talked about. And in my opinion, it's working to help us all understand the movement in Bitcoin. I did want to show you one other chart that looks very similar. Those of you who are new or have not seen it, those of you that have been around for some time, have seen it more times than you want to think about. But I lived through this one. This is the NASDAQ from 2000, approximately, from 1990 all the way up to the peak in 2000, March of 2000, and all the way down for 3 years in phase 7. Obviously, we've got a 2, a 3, a 4 going up, a 5 coming down, a 6 going up again, and then 7. But what I wanted to show people, because a lot of people keep saying, I thought you said we were in a phase 7 and we're going, you know, either to 4,700, which is the old phase 2, or we're going all the way down to 1,000. How come it hasn't done it? Here is the peak of a major hyperwave that took about 10 years to develop, the same as the Bitcoin hyperwave took about 10 years to develop. But it took 2.5 years for phase 7 to get to where it is going. We've been in phase 7 for 4 months. 4 months. So when I answer questions, when people say, you know, when's it going to get there? When's it going to hit this point, that point? My only answer is I have no idea. All I know is that phase 7s tend to take their time getting to where they are going. And it throws a lot of curves at you that that's it. That's as far as it's going now. It's going back up again. This little bounce, which looks like a little bounce. This is a monthly chart, by the way, not a weekly chart. So it's even, you know, more condensed. But this is a 6-month period here between this point and this point. And a lot of people, you know, were buying back in just as they bought in here, and certainly like they bought in on 6, which is usually the thing that catches most people. But it went on for 2.5 years, and finally, you know, nobody cared anymore, and that's when it bottomed out. Now, this is also a funky hyperwave because it should have gone down here somewhere to complete all the way down to phase 1, but it did not, which I'm hoping we're going to see on Bitcoin. I'm hoping it will hold up at phase 2, the old phase 2, somewhere around 47, 48, 49, 5,000 if it takes another 3 or 4 or 5 weeks to get there, 5,100, 5,200, 5,300, something like that in the next month or two. And then starts up like this one did. And you have probably seen what happens as you start up again. It starts and stops and goes up, and people get their hopes up and gives it all back. But then finally, we took out these highs. It took a long, long time, but this is very significant that we took those out. So anyway, I just wanted people to understand that we didn't just start talking about this hyperwave stuff 4.5 months ago. It's been 40 years with many, 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 many examples. Okay, enough of that. Here is the new hyperwave Bitcoin. Here is the phase 2 line, the same one we looked at yesterday. That is not going to change. The only thing that's going to change with that line is it keeps going up. So by September 30th, if we have not gotten there yet, it's going to be up around 6,000. So just know that it's going up at about 80 points per week. And right now is about 4,700. And if it does not hold, then we go all the way back down here to 1,000. Okay, so that's hyperwave stuff. But now I want to go through where we are today. I'm going to just take a quick look at the 30-minute chart because we're sitting at 81.83. The low back here is 8,100, which was, let's just look at the daily or a 12-hour. 12 hours, 8,100 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 days ago. We came down and we had this great looking bottoming hammer with a very long wick, but no follow through. Very surprising. It looked like we could have done something from there, but we didn't. So I turned bearish again after we started trying to go up and failing, trying to go up. We had one little 12-hour period that was barely positive, and then we're on this. We dropped down as low as 81.64 on this candle, and we're sitting at 81.82. So to me, it looks as if this is getting ready for another leg down close to my target, 74, 75, 7,600. But let's look at the evidence, not my opinion. Let's just do it right. Here is the evidence. First of all, we're going to take a look and see if anything's happened with stop and reverse points on the weekly basis. Nope. Still just as negative it was yesterday, and will remain negative until we get up over 10,000 on stop and reverse points. We will take that off. Let's look at the Bollinger Bands. Of course, they have not changed since yesterday, still negative. The only thing that's changing is look how fast the top one is coming down. It's dropping almost vertical. The midline is dropping at more than a 45-degree angle. The bottom is coming up slowly, which is the way Bollinger works. It's going to squeeze the price in between these three. And the important thing is for price to get back above the middle. It's hard to do it when the price is coming down without first coming down to the lower line, which is now at around 5,200. So no help from Bollinger Band in terms of these longer term charts. Let's take a look at the moving averages. The shorter term, we're looking at the 7 and the 30. The 7 is moving up, not very sharply, and the 30 is moving up, but the price is now breaking below the 7 week. And that will turn the 7 week down if we stay down below about 8,400. If we stay below 8,400 going into next week and the week after that, then this is going to begin to fall. There's still a big space between it. We had the death cross about 6 weeks ago. Okay, so no help there in my estimation. Let's take a look at the RSI. Somebody asked a question about the RSI, and I think I answered them today saying, okay, we were overbought for such a long time. Is it possible that we won't get oversold because now all of these sellers have been scared out and the only people left are hodlers and they are not going to sell? Therefore, we might not get to an oversold RSI. I think that's an interesting theory. I don't agree with it. And the reason I don't agree with it is there are an awful lot of people that every tick down, they still are not out. People that bought here and bought here and bought here are at losses, and those losses are getting bigger and bigger. People that bought on this bottom, we're not talking hodlers now, we're talking about investors, speculators, and gamblers. A lot of people bought off of this thinking we were going up. Almost everyone in our Twitter feed became convinced that we were going to take out these highs, and we didn't. We came all the way back down there. And just go back and look at the Twitter over this 5-week period where we went back up to 10,000. Tone was vilified. I was vilified even by people that like the work that we're doing, because they kept saying that you know, they said nasty things. And basically those nasty things were, you know, you guys are idiots. Don't you see that we're going to all new time highs? A couple of people said, you know, I'll bet you anything that we will be above 10,000 before we are below 9,000. Well, we're at 8,100 now. So all of those people, if they were actually acting the way they were talking, are seeing their wealth disappear over the last 2 weeks. Those aren't hodlers, and none of these people are hodlers because they were buying and selling and buying and selling. So the theory that we're not going to get oversold, we might not get oversold. If so, that's a very, very, very rare occurrence. When you are this overbought, this overbought, this overbought, this overbought, this overbought, not to go to the other extreme. It could happen, but that is not the way you want to invest. You want to play the probabilities. Okay, so that's the RSI, the MACD. We are now slightly, 534, 534. It's close. I was going to say we're slightly lower on this last posting of the histogram, but that's too close to call. But clearly the uptrend, it's still in a negative trend, has been for a long time. But the histogram was getting stronger and stronger as these two averages got closer and closer together. Now they are no longer doing that. And any movement down from here, we're going to start to see this expand again. And that is always very disappointing for people that have been watching this go up for 5 weeks, hoping, and then all of a sudden the rug is pulled out from underneath their feet. The legs of the chair are kicked out. They find themselves sprawling on the ground, and they have to ask themselves, what now? I was wrong. It wasn't going up the way I thought it was. Maybe I should step aside. And they become sellers. So that's just sort of the dynamics of how this sort of thing works. Okay, that's MACD, RSI. I think that's really enough in terms of what I wanted to say. But now I want to take a look at shorter term periods, because you all know the longer term in my mind is still negative. So let's look a little more intermediate term. Let's look at the daily and just quickly go through the same thing. Stop and reverse points are negative, and we've now got 7 days in a row, and we are getting lower in price. Let us take a look at the moving averages. Crossed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days ago, negative death cross, and price is lower than it's been on any of those previous 6 days, negative. Bollinger Bands on a 1-day period, we have come down to the lower line. This is what the weekly needs to do. Notice what happened is we broke slightly above the top, tested it again, did not make it, came down to the middle, and on 3 days in a row, we rode that middle, and then we got a break down to the lower line. That's what should happen. That could set up a daily bounce. But what I'd like to see is I would like to see an entire candle below that lower line. And if I am correct, we will see that here in the next day or so. But I would call this on a daily basis neutral, because we made it back down to the bottom. Whereas the weekly, remember, was not neutral because we're way above the bottom. So with that, let's take a look at the moving averages for the daily. And we did that. So I'm losing my mind here. So let's go to the daily MACD. It is clearly lower, this last histogram, than the one before it. The weekly was not. The daily is. We had a negative crossover. These are red, and they are getting worse, not better. So that looks worse than the weekly on a daily basis. Let's just pull up the RSI here for a second. Here's the overbought, not by much, but it's 70, 69, 70. We should go back and test, just like we did here, down around 30. We are at close to 40. I think we will get down to 30 on the daily, on the RSI. Very short term, big candle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2.5 hours ago. As Leah was posting her magnificent story. Bitcoin was dropping like a rock right through both of the moving averages, gone sideways to down since then, tried to bounce, couldn't do it. The last hour and a half, 3 consecutive small negative candles, just no real strength. We've got a double bottom at 8,100, very close. The low on this candle was 81.64. The low on this one was 81.68. And the low here was 81.64. So we're within 60 points of the low back here. If we take that out, which looks almost certain, we should have a drop similar to this one, which in this case went from a high of 8,500 to a low of 8,100. That's 400 points. From 82 would get us down to 78. And that becomes important because we take out this low, and I've got to go up to a bigger time frame. These are all in the 7,000 to 6,700 level. So basically we would be heading down for the next level of support between 67 and 7,100. If what I say feels like is about to happen, does happen. So in summary, it's not looking good into the close here. Maybe we'll all be surprised and we'll see some strength come in. But that is not the way you want to be structured or investing at this point. The probabilities are not on your side. If you are holding or if you are thinking of jumping in at this point, I believe you need to wait longer. And with that, back to Leah.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Hopefully that was a nice, quick one. I did catch all your questions and comments. Today we were just trying to make it nice and quick. You did a good job, Ty, 15 minutes. Great. So, yeah, so we'll definitely do another show. I did catch them all, and Jim and Bob, hi. So everybody have a great day. And again, thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Great. Bye-bye.
Bye.